Okay, this is a really preliminary paper. I presented last year in Bordeaux a more developed paper just on France, on wine trade from France to the rest of the world, and now we have been trying to increase our database, but it's still very preliminary. We still need more data, but at least I would like to show you our first results. So the idea is that we have a lot of literature on globalization and its impact on wine trade, but not so much for the first wave of globalization. And in fact, there are very few works with a quantitative approach for this period. Some of them, but in fact, very few people. But it's very interesting from my point of view, this period, because this is when the international wine market start being integrated. So it's in order to understand the second half of the 20th century and even our present times, it's very interesting to go back and trying to understand what happened and how this market started emerging during this period of time. So the idea is, let's try to analyze the trajectory of wine export from the main players in this game during this time. And the idea is we are going to apply standard gravity models or some econometrics to try to assess which were the main determinants of the growing of this trade during this period. These data are morely based on a new database that will be available in some month. It's based on a work I have made with Kim Anderson, and in this database you will find area, production, consumption of wine, beer, and other alcoholic drinks, export and imports in volume and value for the whole world. From, it depends which variable, but more or less with annual data from more or less 1850, 1860 up to now. So that will be available in some month, and it's something we have been doing when we were preparing a book, Wine Globalization, that will be published by Cambridge University Press at the end of this year. So you see, in this case, what happened about world wine export. You see that from the middle of the 19th century up, this is just in volume, so up to the end of the 19th century, there was a big increase in world wine exports, and these were the forming players in this market: France, Italy, Spain, and Algeria, and these are the countries we are working with in this work. If we move from volume to value, the picture is a little bit different. You see that in this case, mostly the first third of the 20th century has a better image because it still was increasing during this period export, and this blue line are the countries where we are working in this paper. And in this case, you have just shares to see that at the beginning of the middle of the 19th century, France was by far the most important player. More than 70% of export comes from France to the rest of the world. But due to the phylloxera plague, Spain started exporting a lot to France, mostly to France. And then a little later, Algeria also was becoming a big player in this game, mostly due to the fact that the French colonial policy was just trying to increase the vineyard area in this region, in this country. What about the imports in this market? Imports were extremely concentrated, and the interesting thing is that France was also the main importer, but really by far during this period. You see that more than 50% of world imports of wine during this period were directed to France. And then there was a few a few group of countries. Most of them were neighbors of France, so Austria, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland. The UK, let's say, is also a neighbor, close neighbor, or countries with a lot of population coming from the Mediterranean countries, like Argentina with Italians, Spaniards, and the United States mostly with Italian. And the rest of the world, in fact, you see that never had more than a 20% of war exports. Okay, so I'm going, I don't know, I guess you are not really interested in this kind of technical details, but this is a standard gravity model. In a standard gravity model, we have our dependent variable are the exports in volume from France, Italy, Spain, and Algeria. We have the GDPs the GDP of the country of the importer, the production of the exporter and the importer. The idea of the production of the exporter means that the capacity of supplying the market from this country, and the production of the importer tries to measure if there is a home bias. That means that when the production in this country is higher, the importer less one. And finally, we take into account the transport cost. Usually in this kind of models, distance is included as a proxy of transport cost. Here we have real transport cost. So how much is the cost of exporting 1 hectoliter of wine per mile, and multiply by the distance between these countries. And we add some qualitative variables that I'm explaining very, very fast, like being a colony of another country, because we have always pair of countries in this kind of model: World War I, the depression of the Ferre, the Soviet Revolution, the US prohibition, if both countries were in the gold standard. And also we include dummies for perfect effect to capture other characteristic not included in the model. And finally, we use a PPML model. That is, the idea is just we have a lot of zeros. So in many cases there are zeros in some direction of trade. So we have right now around 6,000 observations. We will increase because right now sherry wine from Spain is not already included, and also quality for wine from high quality wine for Spain is not included. And we have 3 different models. One model for the total of wine exported, another model for low quality wine, another model high quality wine. How to measure high and low quality wine is mostly based on if the wine is bottled or is in cask, is the idea. And also we compare the price per hectoliter to be sure that we are doing the right thing. The coverage is very high. We have more or less 75% of world export of wine, so we're very confident about the robustness of the results we're having here.
Just back one, please.
Yeah.
Isn't your total 10,000?
Sorry?
Your total is 10,000, yes?
No, because in the total model we are adding low and high quality wine. So we have this is low, this is high quality wine, and for the total wine we are adding export of champagne and export of wine in cask from France to the same destination. So this is the idea. And we have one export from these 4 countries to 37 destinations, and this is volume export measured by 1910 price, mostly based in national foreign trade statistics. And these are the results. I'm going very, very fast to the results. The idea is that there is a positive relationship between exporting and wine production in the exporting country. This is mostly driven this result by a phylloxera crisis. That means that when French production went down, France started exporting more. And also we see that the importing culture production also has a negative relationship with wine export. This is the home bias plus the phylloxera. That means that if Switzerland was producing a little more, they import less wine. Also we have a significant coefficient and negative for the trade cost. That means that the decreasing of trade cost was pushing the the export in this market. Also, it's interesting that most of this kind of institutional, let's say institutional or external shocks were affecting very heavily to the export of wine, like World War I, Soviet Revolution. So this kind of events, they were reducing the volume of trade. And also interesting that the cultural distance, in this case we measure just being or not a Muslim country, also has a negative sign. That means that was more difficult. Of course, this is quite evident to export to this kind of country. And now we move to the models. I'm just trying to stress some differences. One interesting difference is that either the production of the exporting country or the production of the importing country has not effect. We talk about high quality wine. So this is a different market, and it was not really related with home production. That's, for example, talking about champagne. So Switzerland was importing champagne, and the volume of imports didn't depend on the Swiss production of wine. It was completely different market. And also it's interesting that high quality wine export were not depending of domestic production in the exporting country. That means that during phylloxera, as France wanted to maintain their export, they were just importing wine from Spain and blending Spanish wine with French wine from Bordeaux, and then re-exporting the wine to England as French wine. So that's interesting too. And also another interesting result is that the market side, so the demand measured by the GDP of the importing country, only had an impact on high quality wine. That is quite interesting because you see that in many countries wine was not a mass consumption good. That means that even if income was increasing in some countries, population were not drinking more wine because they were drinking beer or vodka or any other drink. Also interested that being a Muslim country didn't affect export of high quality wine. That's also quite unstable because people in what is now Pakistan or India or Indonesia or Algeria or Morocco drinking wine were mainly Europeans. So this being a Muslim country didn't affect because these people, the Muslim countries were heavy importers of wine during this period of time. Okay, so just I'm finished just with very short conclusions. It's very interesting to stress the central role of France in this world market as a large exporter and the main importer. Also the importance of phylloxera in order to articulate the world market. It was probably the most important fact during this period because this phylloxera turned France into a large importer that was not before. And also this French you know that phylloxera arrived first to France. That means that some countries like Spain, Italy, and Algeria and Greece, they were increasing their production and their export. I have already mentioned this last idea, and running out with my time. So we have time if you want for some.